What makes Star Trek like it be, and not just crappy or quality TV that was made to boldly go. This is Jonathan and this is Paul, and I'm not really on the show at all, so let's move on with this intro. Pardon me, I'm sick. We judge the episodes that we see based on these criteria 3. First, is there science fiction integral to the episode? Second, is that science fiction presented in a unique or novel way? Third, is there an ethical or moral dilemma presented? And that's the premise of this show. It's the measure of an episode, as you know.
But, I mean, so is the opening song of this episode, which, as you know, this is the measure of an episode. Measure being a 4-beat time of a song. Where it is our continuing mission to explore what makes Star Trek proper Star Trek, and not just the greatest story ever told, or RoboCop 2017, or Once More with Feeling. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Paul, and the criteria by which we judge these episodes: number 1, is there science fiction inherent to the plot? Number 2, is that science fiction unique or novel in some way? And number 3, is there a musical number threaded
that a
through
character
the
must
entire-
face.
Yeah, exactly. I'm Paul.
And I'm Jonathan, and this week we finally got to our musical episode of Strange New World, which is Subspace Rhapsody. And did you do a vocal blurb? Or
I did, and
Okay.
it's very disappointing. An accident with an experimental quantum probability field causes everyone on the USS Enterprise to break uncontrollably into song. But the real danger is at the field is expanding and beginning to impact other ships, allies, and enemies alike. So,
except for at, that's spot on. It was, is
spot
that
on.
the field is expanding?
and I try and trip it up too. I talk really fast in a Scottish accent, and it still gets it perfectly fine. Siri's like getting way better.
Clearly, yeah. Maybe she just knows
Speaking
that you're
of
a nerd and like Star Trek stuff, and so she's like pulling from that database now. She's like, I got you.
I hate this podcast, so I'm going to try and thwart it at every level possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So should we start talking about this episode, or did you have anything general to say about it? Because I know that you've been waiting and waiting and waiting to watch this episode, and I didn't even know about it.
I mean,
until you had mentioned it.
How many like musical references do you want to kind of throw into this? Because you just referenced Shrek. I don't know, and I'm pretty sure you didn't even realize you did that.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Shrek since all of the songs in it were relevant.
Oh no, I'm not talking Smash Mouth. I'm talking the musical.
Oh.
Yeah. Did you know there was a musical?
Then I've definitely not. No, and I definitely didn't.
Yeah.
So you're saying that this episode is exactly like Lion King?
Actually, I'm saying it's the exact opposite. I was super, I mean, you know, we're going to get into the weeds at this point, but I was super disappointed that the second blast did not cause them to go into a probability where they not only knew how to sing, but they knew how to dance too.
That would
kind
have
of
been nice.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was expecting after they got hit again, that they were now going to have choreographed songs.
Right. And I will say that is my biggest complaint about this episode is the production value of it as a musical episode. When you think musical, you think song and dance.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And there was very little dancing. Most of the numbers took place in a single room. Most of them took place with the characters really just standing there singing.
Right.
Or just walking down a hallway. There's that whole thing between Una and
Kirk?
Yes. We just keep compounding the inside jokes and compounding to the point where we don't even know why we say them.
Right.
But anyway, it felt very subdued, and I understand why. They had to take all of their time and money for everyone to learn these pretty technically difficult songs,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that they have accompaniment and there's duets and they have to practice them and they have to record them. So I understand that. So they probably didn't have a lot of time to do intricate numbers where they're going in and out of rooms and they're interfacing with a lot of different crew members, et cetera, like you would see in a musical. If there were a Star Trek musical, this hopefully is not what it would look like, because it was just very understated in terms of their physical movements.
Right. I mean, they were just breaking into song, kind of what you were saying. And one of the problems for me with the songs, you know, kind of you talking about the technical difficulty of them, was that they all really sounded similar.
Yes.
there was the slow song that everyone skips over in the album that Una was singing to, Nuh-uh. And there was the fun little like kind of the waltz that Una and Kirk were singing. But other than that, like if you played probably even 4 bars from any of them, I would not be able to tell you which song it was.
Yeah, it felt like the songs, I felt myself not listening to the songs, but trying to listen to the lyrics.
Right.
And I have trouble doing both at the same time. Is that something that people do? Can you enjoy the song and also process what's happening in the lyrics?
Yes, but I don't listen to the song in the same way that you do. It's kind of like what I told you before. One of the nicest things about Lin-Manuel Miranda is his rhymes continue the story pretty much uninterrupted. He manages to form his sentences in a way where he's not saying what's necessary and then saying another line that just rhymes with it, and then saying another line that's necessary and then saying a rhyme. Like, he has a tendency to keep his story going through the entire song.
Right. And I would say that most musicals, in terms of what the songs are doing, they're typically not forwarding the plot. They're really giving insight into what the character is thinking or feeling at that particular time. Or trying, I guess when you have a duet, sometimes there's advice being given. But the thing about it is that usually in the spoken element, they sum up the 5.5-minute song in a couple of lines, and then they give you a song giving you the same sentiment.
See,
and so that's what happened.
Right. I would partly disagree with that, because that's one of my complaints about this episode, is that there really wasn't any forward movement of the songs. They were all essentially asides. And one of the things that I like about one of the type of musical song that I like is the one that moves the story forward.
I didn't quite get what the reason for doing the musical episode was, because, as you said, the songs weren't particularly interesting. They were well crafted, especially I think the opening number.
Yes.
I felt like that was they must have spent all of their time on that.
Right.
That one and maybe the closing big grand finale type of thing.
Which can I jump ahead to that, or?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that they had the fireworks, the subspace fold exploding as the button a little too late. And what I think that they should have done was had everybody singing at the end and like have the explosion going over their final note, ending the subspace fold, and then it goes back to everybody and like everybody's off pitch. Like there are people who can't hold their breath anymore.
Yeah. That would be great if the illusion is broken, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I get the impression that it's not that the subspace anomaly, whatever, quantum probability field, made them better singers. It just made them express themselves in song, right? That was the premise?
Yeah.
So the idea that once the facade is broken by the subspace, the quantum, whatever, that they can finally hear themselves as they're singing and not the way they want to be hearing themselves.
Right.
That's amazing. Why didn't they do that?
Yeah.
Oh, so it was so good.
Yeah, that's what.
So good. How disappointing that you said that. You ruined it for me.
I'm sorry, but yeah, like, and the other part too, at the end where they're like kind of doing the roll call, which they should have done as well. I didn't even think of that until right now. Like at the end of the episode, over the credits, they should have had everybody like running out onto the bridge and like waving to the camera, or like finding everybody in their stations and they like actually turn to the camera and smile or something.
Right.
So they had the original series theme song playing over the end, and again, same thing. I feel like that was a missed opportunity, because there's an episode that you and I have seen where Kirk is mingling at some kind of cocktail party and they're playing the theme song as like kind of a, 60s lounge song in the background, which means that the Enterprise theme song, or the original series theme song, is part of the universe. And
Right.
it would have been amazing if in this episode they actually did put lyrics to, either made it a bridge of a song or actually used the theme song and added lyrics to it, or did something with that melody and used it in one of the songs so that even more became part of the universe.
Yeah. I think that that's my complaint about it too, is that it didn't feel like there was a lot of cohesion in what the intent was behind them singing. To me, I would have liked it if they took it a step further in the ridiculousness, that they would just kind of be singing, and they weren't necessarily numbers, but they were just singing dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to them doing the musical thing where they're singing their feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like, why do it at that point? Because we already know everything that the characters are feeling at this point. I think they've done a good job through the course of the show to give us those things.
Right.
And nothing was surprising, but it would have been interesting to do it like that opening number, where it was almost a technical song in the sense that they were just speaking or singing dialogue.
That's true. Yeah,
right?
they weren't singing their emotions at that point.
Yeah, they were giving us, the plot was actually moving forward. Like, I can't believe I'm singing right now. And that was what they were singing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was fun to me.
Yeah.
That was, I guess, a little bit more science fiction that adhered to the premise that there was some external force making them want to sing.
Right. Well, yeah, like I loved Kirk's comment about that. He's like, I thought you guys practiced that until I started singing too.
I do want to live in the world where they play pranks like that of that level.
Right.
Of sophistication on people.
Well, and he just goes with it. Like he's walking through and he's like, oh, you guys. But yeah, there were two song opportunities that would have progressed the characters forward. One of them they completely acknowledged, La'an saying like she's got to talk to Kirk before it comes out in song, which I think it should have come out in song. I think that would have been great, like revelations for both of them that would have moved their character arcs forward. But then also to connect the Kirks, like I think that the brothers should have had some kind of patter song, talking about how like they kind of already had that at the bar that one day where they were talking about like their family or whatever, their dad. But to like it still felt like it, when they were working together, Sam was still kind of complaining to Jim about like the things that he was doing, and I feel like that was a great moment of heightened emotions where they should have revealed like what their true feelings were and not just anger or jealousy or resentment toward each other through song, but they didn't do that. It
would have been probably more work, I guess, and that's why they didn't do stuff like that, because it's a lot of work to make actors who aren't necessarily singers learn songs. It's, if you think about learning a song that you don't have a recording to reference, think about how hard that would be, where it's just somebody plunking it out on a keyboard for you and you kind of have to turn it into a song. A lot of people say, well, I learn songs all the time. Yeah, but have you learned a song that
nobody else knows? Right.
Where you didn't get to practice to the final recording.
Yeah.
So that's the difficult part. And maybe they had professional singers mock them up so they could just listen to them and practice that way. Mm-hmm. That's what I would have done. That would have been way easier. But I felt like it wasn't very clever.
Right.
That first number was clever because
I
felt like it made sense to the plot, but everything else was just sort of a musical.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of felt myself thinking, why do we need this? Like, why are we doing this other than the novelty of having Star Trek people sing songs?
Right.
You had an opportunity to do something, to flip this idea of usually serious show doing a musical episode,
Mm-hmm. Well, and you could still keep it fairly serious. I mean, one of the reasons why I brought up RoboCop and the Greatest Story Ever Told is because so many people talked about both of those movies as those movies would have been great if the original RoboCop and The Passion of the Christ were not before them, respectively. So the same thing. Like this would have been great if we didn't already have Once More with Feeling, and because one of the things about that episode is it does make revelations that the characters didn't already know, that the audience didn't even know.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm talking about with Once More with Feeling?
No.
Okay, it's the Buffy episode. It was the Buffy musical episode.
Right.
Like she died previously, and since she came back, she's been kind of ambivalent and doesn't really care whether or not she dies in the fight. So she's being way more reckless, and she reveals to everybody that when she died, she was in heaven, and when they pulled her out, they told her that she can't come back. So like everybody is now aware of that. And this episode didn't have that kind of gut punch, aside from the little side character with Chris and his girlfriend, where they revealed to each other that they didn't want to do what the other one was doing.
Right. And that would have been good too. I felt like they played that pretty seriously.
Yeah.
In a way that was, I guess, interesting from a character standpoint. I don't know. I got through the episode and I felt like I didn't care.
Right.
It was just like they weren't very good songs, and it seemed like they were pulling out all the stops to check the box of, well, we sang songs in this episode,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which wasn't, I don't know, it felt uninspired to me.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, going back to what you were saying about the dialogue of the first song versus all the others expressing heightened emotion but not really doing anything, like another way they could have captured that, something where like Uhura figures out that there is a song occurring every X amount of minutes, and so they now have like a repeating but a deadline where they have to have something done in that time frame. You know, so like every 7 minutes there's a new song, and the song runs for like 2.5 minutes or something. And it doesn't matter what's happening on the Enterprise. That's when people are breaking into song.
Oh, so 2 scenarios jumped into my head that would have been amazing. Number 1 scenario is that kind of idea where there seems to be a time factor to this, like a ticking clock, and that, okay, we have 7 minutes until the next song. And then all of a sudden they start singing, and we have to cut. They do a time cut. So you get the first note of the song and the last note of the song.
Sure.
and then they immediately get back to work. And it's funny because they're like, some of them are on their knees, like facing the audience,
right?
You know,
yeah.
and they're ta-da, and they get up and they have to run over to the console to continue their work. That would be amazing.
Yes.
Then the second one is there are songs, pockets of songs going throughout the ship as people are compelled to reveal their feelings, right?
Right, yeah.
And so you can get dragged into one by accident. And so that happens a couple of times, right? Like, and someone has to kind of pull you out of the song because, you know, you have work to do. So you can't just go off and do a 2.5 minute number now. I'm going to pull you out of the song, and that snaps them out of it.
Right. Which, so it's kind of like Timescape, where there are pockets of musical energy. So you can walk into them and just suddenly start breaking into song, and like people, you know, they like sanction off different areas of the Enterprise, say like musical zone, do not enter.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, and the idea that every single kind of genre of musical song is going on, where you have the sad love story, the upbeat thing, the like murder songs that happen now.
Sure.
Like, you know, there's, you know, those kind of things.
Yeah,
like
like
someone's
Scarlet
plotting
Pimpernel and Jekyll and Hyde. Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be fun, right?
Yeah.
And it would be, I feel like that's a more clever way to approach the musical episode, and even more of a science fiction way, right?
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to just them just learning, I mean, long songs.
Right.
You know, scenes in Star Trek aren't this long.
Right.
And so, you know, the La'an one specifically sticks out as one that was a bit laborious to me, because she truly is just standing there for most of it, or she's walking slowly in her quarters.
Her power ballad?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I felt like they were trying to feature her as an actor who can also sing.
Right.
Which I'm not interested in. Actually, that doesn't interest me a lot in modern musicals these days, because they do seem like vocal features more so than they like. The music is written to feature the vocal, and not the vocal is there to
move the story,
express the song.
Yeah.
You know, and it felt, I kind of wanted to put it on double speed, but I didn't. I had respect for the episode.
I mean, it probably would have made the song way more fun to watch.
I thought you were going to say shorter. I'm like, yeah, that's fair. That's what would have happened.
Not probably, Jonathan. Yes, that would have happened.
There was a point in the show where it was unclear if the accompaniment is also audible.
It was. Like,
if they can hear.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah.
Because they kept
started to
looking
be
up
like,
and around like every time the music started.
Which is interesting, because if you really break that down, which we're not supposed to do, but we're going to do that anyway, the idea that they're having some sort of shared musical accompaniment, because I can understand the idea that people just want to break into song, which anyone can do at any time.
Sure.
Right? You can start singing, but there isn't an audible accompaniment happening.
Right.
Right? So this idea they're having some sort of shared hallucination of music that they can all sing to on key. Why is that?
So right. So to give it some kind of explanation, like they were talking about how the frequency, and it could just be that it's not necessarily what the audience is hearing, but they're having some kind of frequency resonation happening in their eardrums that is giving them the key and the chord progression.
No, don't buy it.
Okay.
Don't buy it. I need something. I need more. I need, like, there's something else happening.
Okay.
Well, they did say that they were. What was the whole thing about the musical style because they were sending music into
Right.
the thing, and so maybe that's was being pumped back out to them.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Maybe they did handle it. I just don't remember.
Well, yeah. I mean, Carol Kane did kind of mention that when she was in the conference room for the first time ever, for no reason. It's like she was randomly there. She was talking about the harmonic and the melodic frequencies being
Right.
blasted through. Since it was her idea, I guess that's why she was there. But
Let's talk about that for a second.
Please.
Why is Carol Kane in this show?
right.
So I will tell you that I have seen the last episode as well.
Okay.
And speaking of disappointment, but there's more to
Oh,
that.
man.
But
Okay.
anyway, but there's more to that. So don't take that as any kind of judgment just yet.
Okay.
But anyway, this idea that they marketed her as being a part of the show,
Right.
and as though there was something that she was going to add that no one else could.
Uh-huh.
And I have not seen.
We're
that.
still waiting.
Like
Yeah.
she's in the show. I bet you if aside from the time travel episode with La'an and Kirk, in terms of the day-to-day on the ship of what she contributes to the plot lines,
Mhm.
like has she been on the show for a cumulative 10 minutes, would you say?
I think a little bit more, but yeah.
Like, you understand my point,
Yes.
right? They're all an
Yeah.
hour long.
Right.
And she's barely in the show.
Right.
Why is she on the show?
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. Preaching to the choir. Like, so
Oh,
listen.
I wanted to fight.
Sorry.
I wanted you to be like, no, anything that she gives to any production is gold.
No, like I've been wondering this as well. Like, yes, it's Carol Kane, and it's like, oh my gosh, what's she gonna do? Like the time travel episode, she did not provide any. Like, she didn't even know she had the watch.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't even remember if she even if she knew why it was glowing or what its purpose was. Like, it did not have to be Carol Kane. Every single
Right.
scene that we've had with her did not have to be her.
Right. And why did they get rid of Hammer? Hammer?
Right.
Hammer?
Well, so he could play the Klingon in this episode.
Did he play the Klingon in this episode?
Yep.
Oh, that wasn't just a joke.
No.
You're like, nope, but that was a good one. Right? That would be nice, wouldn't it? Oh, okay. Well, that's a shitty problem.
Well, that's a shitty reason. Like,
Yeah.
we're going to kill you off in
But-
episode 9 of season 1 so you can come back in episode 9 of season 2 and sing.
Also, in terms of which character is more interesting, is it Carol Kane's character, who has had 9 lines throughout the course of the season, or is it Hemmer? You're going to say Carol Kane, aren't you?
No, I'm going to
Just-
say Hemmer. Like, why? I don't even
Okay,
understand.
right.
Like,
Well, I'm still playing with this headcanon that you are a huge closeted Carol Kane.
I'm like, I'm white knuckled gripping my seat over here, trying to just agree with you about all of it.
Right. Yeah,
I'm
I
like the
just don't
doctor
understand
from
it.
the last
I
episode.
mean, did they mean to have her in the episode more, or not in the episode, in the show more? And like they're just like, oh, maybe she didn't, like there's something happened.
Right.
I just don't understand.
Right.
It doesn't make sense.
I know. I agree. And I'm assuming based on your confusion that the same thing kind of holds true in the last episode as well. That just if she is in it, she's still of no consequence.
Well, the idea was that maybe they're saving her up. Maybe
Right.
she's going to have her own dedicated episode of some kind where she really shines.
Yeah. But they didn't do that.
Which still could be the case. No, you don't know. You haven't seen it yet. Maybe I'm leading you on or leading you astray.
Right.
Yeah. There you go.
It's, I mean, based on what you're saying, another possibility is that they have been planting the seeds enough. See, no, as I'm saying that out loud, I was gonna say so that like when she dies, we're like, oh, Carol Kane died, but it's like, then why was she there? She was introduced in season 1.
This is what I'm going to ruin it for you right now.
Okay.
Okay. She is the Borg Queen.
From what?
All of them.
Oh, she's like the Borg queen.
She's the Borg Queens. Okay, one other thing. Let's go back.
Okay.
Let's go back
Yeah.
to the very beginning of the episode.
Okay.
I trust you heard the main title,
Yes.
which is also confusing because the main title was like a Glee Club version
Uh-huh.
of it. And this episode was not Glee Club at all.
No.
Didn't feel it. Now, that would have been rad. If they did that and the whole thing was like Glee Club arrangements,
Right.
then I would have been on board 100%, no matter what the content of the songs were. Because that's really hard. In terms of getting people to sing in a group like that,
Mm-hmm.
that's tough. And the production of the main title was no small feat, I will
Right.
tell you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I was actually just like, I was hoping, and maybe it was that I just didn't hear it well enough, but I was hoping that the last sting at the end would also be just somebody in the stratosphere singing those final notes.
They could have done anything. I mean, there are people who can do anything.
Right.
Right.
It
They
didn't
could
sound
have-
like it. It sounded like it was still just the same kind of whistle tone. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, you're right. You're right. And it could have been somebody actually whistling.
Right.
But who knows?
Right.
But I think what sums this up better for me is the musical episode concept for this episode, for this show, just felt like a single joke that they just kept telling over and over again.
Mm,
The joke being, why am I singing, but I'm singing
right.
type of thing.
Mhm,
And that was just
mhm.
the whole time, the whole thing.
Yeah.
They didn't expand on that. The first time, well, that was the joke. And you're like, I'm on board.
Right.
Yeah, okay, what's next?
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't mean to jump back and then forward and then back again.
No, that's fine. It's one of my favorite things is the meta singing. There's a movie from Disney, I think it's called Teen Beach Movie, where they get sucked into a beach musical from like the 50s and 60s. And one of the characters does not want to be there, and she sings a whole song about how she's stuck in a musical, saying, I can't stop singing. And it's great. And I there's another musical, I think it's off Broadway, called, I think, Title of Play. And it's the same thing. Like it's characters talking about how they are finally singing a song on stage because they've been off on the side and they're just the friends to the main characters. And it's those kind of songs where they are very clearly breaking the fourth wall, that I get such a kick out of. And I'm kind of sad that, like, aside from Kirk's throwaway line, like, nobody really said in their songs, like they just kind of went with their emotions.
Right. They eventually succumb to expressing their emotions and not being surprised that they're singing anymore.
Yeah.
I guess they
Like,
got used to it.
yeah, it would have been great if La'an's second song was about her, instead of expressing her emotion to Kirk, like singing about how she had something she wanted to say, but she couldn't, and almost, again, maybe I just wanted a patter song in this, but so it's like her singing to him and then pulling aside and him being like, I can still hear you, type thing.
Right.
But they didn't do that.
No, they didn't do that. The one thing, though, that was almost comedic was when La'an finally confesses her love for Kirk, to Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
And they just keep piling on the reasons why they will never
Right.
be together.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. Well, and I
Oh, it
did
was so
like
great.
that, she was kind of like, oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh.
Like-
Oh.
Uh,
I mean, I just kept it. I wanted to keep going.
okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like forever. Like just keep piling on ridiculous,
She's
just more
pregnant.
absurd.
With my third child.
Yeah. I just felt so bad for Lon. I was like, oh God, could you talk about all-time backfires?
Right.
She's like, I'm never going to express myself to anyone ever again.
I mean, that was her dilemma. And like, she was like, all right, I'm just going to put it out there. Well, that was a terrible mistake. I am never doing that ever again. I was right to not do that in the first place.
Yeah.
Screw you, Una. I am great at keeping secrets.
Aside from him stabbing me in the face, it could not have gone worse. Yeah.
Didn't they even
But,
have a moment? Like, doesn't she see Una later? She's like, how did it go? And she's like, not good.
Mm. Well, I feel like she's not being honest with her in terms of what happened. She's like, well, I put myself out there and that was the lesson.
Right.
And Una's like, oh, that bad, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, did we need the clip show of the time travel episode before that whole thing? Like, I feel like there's a point in the episode where they give us a recap of the time travel episode with
Yeah, in her power ballad. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I felt like I didn't need it.
If you didn't see that episode, it looks like a fantasy of hers. It looks like she's got this just huge crush on Kirk, and that's what she's picturing they would do together.
And he dies in the end. That's a pretty fucked up fantasy, if you asked me.
Oh, did he? I must have missed that part.
He dies. Well, he dies at the end. Yeah, because she's nursing him, like, and unsuccessfully, unfortunately. And yeah, he died. Doesn't he die in the flashback?
If he did, like I totally missed that part.
I like that. That's how messed up Lawan is.
Right. Her her fantasy is that she falls in love with a guy. They have a couple nights together, and then he dies.
She's like, I'm always sabotaging my relationship.
Yeah.
But anyway, I had another observation, which
Yeah.
I thought was interesting. That you had told me at the beginning of this season that Pike kind of had to limit his availability because he has a newborn.
Mm.
And never has it been more apparent to me that someone has a newborn than Pike's face in this, because he looks so tired. And once you see it, you can't unsee it because he just looks terrible. And this is with state-of-the-art, industrial-grade TV makeup.
Right.
And he still looks like he's just barely
Up all
able
night.
to stay
Yeah.
conscious. Yeah. And I will say that that works well for the next episode, the coming episode.
Oh, okay.
I don't feel like it worked well for this. I feel like the energy was down.
Right.
I feel like it was down a little bit.
Oh.
I will say, so can I tell you something? Speaking of children,
Yeah.
I started doing something. So, you go on walks with your child and they're walking around. Huck is walking, so he walks around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what they do.
And there's always that exchange between parents, which is like, oh, how cute, how old?
Mm-hmm.
And I have started just saying, 8 months. And you can easily weed out the people who have had children and those who have not. Because the people who haven't had children, it's like, 8 months, congratulations. And you're like, yeah, you don't get it.
Right.
He's like up walking, saying bye-bye.
Yeah.
It's like 8-month-olds don't.
Right.
They don't do that.
They're barely crawling.
But
right.
I love it. It's so fun to me for them to because for a second they're like, 8 months, like the parents.
Uh-huh.
It's so fun for me when the parents are like, 8 months. It's like 8 months.
Right.
Wow. Walking and
Yeah.
and I let it hang there for like a couple seconds. Like, no, he's 15 months.
Right.
It's so much fun.
Right.
It's the same kind of fun as when somebody. I kept telling my wife to do this. Is that when somebody came up to you when she was obviously 8.5 months pregnant? Oh, when do you do? And she's like, what do you mean?
Yep. Did she ever?
No, never did.
I know. Becca didn't either.
So I fired her.
Yep.
Yeah, I fired her.
Yeah. Everyone
So
who's
disappointing.
pregnant, I say, like, you should do this, please, and just tell me how it goes.
Yes, I know. Please record it.
Right.
Oh, it's so great. What do you mean? Do?
Right.
At the library?
Yeah.
Like get indignant, That's all I have to say about this episode.
Nice. I did enjoy it, and I do think it's a proper Star Trek episode, which is impressive given a musical. But I think as a musical episode, it was kind of disappointing.
Yeah, I feel like they should have spent twice as much time on it, right? They should have done
Make it a
more.
two-parter. Is that what you're saying?
No, I think if they had put twice as much time into this episode, it would have come out better and spent, obviously twice as much money on it.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think to myself, I don't care enough about it. It could have been better. It could have been more of a production.
Right.
But it didn't forward the plot at all,
Right.
really.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a lot of science fiction exploration in it because they were busy singing.
Right.
I do appreciate the effort, though.
I think that's the part that I'm disappointed in. They got so excited about making a musical episode that they didn't knock it out of the park. They were like, it's a musical episode in Star Trek. What more do you want? And it was like you could have made this amazing, and instead you just made it a musical episode. Like it's just another episode of Star Trek. It's not like you have to watch this episode.
Right. I can't imagine people wanting to rewatch it either.
Right.
It doesn't really hit you that way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It wasn't overtly funny.
Right.
So it didn't have that going for it. They weren't great songs, so it didn't have that going for it.
I did appreciate the wordplay on that he was the X and he was searching for the Y. Like that was so good.
Yep. And that, they did a good job. I'm not saying they didn't do a good job. It just felt like it was a bit lackluster considering how expensive this probably was.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yeah. All right. Well,
what do you think? Proper episode?
Yeah, I think it's a proper episode. It's kind of in the honorary type of thing because they didn't break any new ground necessarily.
Aside from it being,
I guess
a musical.
they did being a musical,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, you're right.
They kind of acknowledged it right out the gate because there's a part in Once More with Feeling where they talk about that maybe what's causing it is bunnies, And so that's kind of why Bunnies was brought up in the writing room. It's very specifically an acknowledgement to that episode of Buffy, which was kind of, I'm pretty sure it was the first musical episode in any kind of like dramedy where it was original songs and it was part of the story and not just either people singing cover songs or, doing anything like that. But just that episode just did it so much better, And so like if you're going to do something like this where you are, acknowledging it and people are kind of expecting it to be the same, kind of what you're saying, like the effort should have been there to knock it out of the park, to make it a contender with that. And it's not. It's a Star Trek episode where everybody breaks into song.
Mathematically, the episode works.
It's a mathematically perfect episode.
Right. Right. So, but it just didn't blow me away. I mean, I'm sure that there are people who loved it, right?
Right.
I don't really care about musicals anyway. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
For as much as we talk about musicals on this show, you'd think that I would care about musicals more.
Right. Well, right. I mean, and we can go into that more. I don't know when, in our new podcast, The Measure of a Musical.
The Measure of a Measure.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. You want to close this out? Because I feel like I'm always closing us out and you get mad. So you get to close this out.
All right. Well, I don't get mad. It's just like, here we go again. I got to come with somebody new. But I feel like you've got one prepared. So I've been Jonathan.
And I've been Paul.
And this has been The Measure of an Episode.
But you already knew that.
Quiet, the witch.